Hi, how you doing? In this one, it's another interview, and this time we're talking to Andy Roberts, who's one of the original pioneers of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in the UK. Fascinating man. He's got his fingers in a lot of pies. Does a lot of work with the military, does a lot of work with the UFC. Hugely experienced, really old school, and I think it's a really interesting interview. I have to mention it was filmed quite a long time ago, and I'm about 10 kilos heavier now. I didn't realise quite how much weight I'd lost until I went back and watched this video. So, it is what it is. But it's not about me, it's about Andy. So check it out, let me know what you think, and stick something in the comments. Let me know who else you want me to interview, and we'll make it happen. Hi Andy, thanks very much for agreeing to talk to me. We're here at Andy Roberts BJJ, and Andy's one of the pioneers of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in the UK. So why don't we start by just telling me a bit about your background, when you got into grappling
So I think I was about 8 years old, got taken to the local sort of judo school by my parents, because obviously you're that age, bit of sort of anti-bullying stuff, give yourself a bit of confidence. I was always like, I want to do kickboxing, I want to do all that. And then my mum's a physio, she's like, no, head injuries, head trauma, none of that. So took me down to the local judo club. Did that for a while. That ended up closing. I tried other clubs, didn't quite feel as comfortable. And then I ended up finding sort of traditional jiu-jitsu, probably about 12 years old. Started training that, loved that.
So how long ago was that?
30 years. So,
okay.
So I was born in 1980. So
okay.
There we go. So about 88 I started training. And then I think it was either 94, UFC 1 had come out, and I was having a sleepover. I think I was probably 14 years old. And we convinced my mate's mum to get UFC 1 out of the video store. VHS at that time, that's how old. Watched that. Amazing to see a guy in a gi doing jiu-jitsu, winning. Went back to the local jiu-jitsu club, look, we're doing this, guy won. They'd never heard of it. So okay, fine. Continued doing the Japanese jiu-jitsu. And then in about 98, I think it was either 98, 99, went on a seminar with Carly Gracie. And I was like, this is the style of jiu-jitsu I want to do. Once we nailed that, once I figured out that was the style, I started researching, doing it, couldn't find anywhere to train. Got videos, drilled what I did in the seminar, and then in 2000 I finished school, had a year out, and I went to the Gracie Academy in Torrance. Did 5 hours a day for 10 days. That hurt the knees a lot, and then that was probably the start of my journey. I got back from that, found out Hoist was in Manchester, went to that seminar, and then now we're here. Well, we did sort of the following year, went back. Found Mauricio in about 2002, 2003. Started training with him. He then moved to London. 2004, I moved down to Guildford and then helped Roger sort of setting up his academy in London.
Okay.
And fast forward, and we're here.
Yeah. So, and it was pretty new at that point.
Yeah. So I think when I got my blue belt in 2001. Out in America, and I think we did a count up of who was blue belts. I think there was about 35 blue belts at the time in the country.
So how many black belts were there in the UK at that point?
English ones, 0.
Okay.
Like UK ones, 0. So there was only Mauricio, and I think there was Arlen Sakara in London. So Mauricio was in Birmingham for a while, but I didn't know that. So obviously the internet wasn't massive back then. We had Combat Magazine, people appearing and do stuff.
Yeah.
But there was hardly anyone around, so it was kind of get hold of whatever knowledge you could, find whoever wanted to train, and then do what you could do.
So now, how many black belts have you got under you in this academy?
I think we've got about 21 now from you. From here. Yeah.
Okay. So I think that's quite impressive.
It's a bit different. So we always at we opened the academy 2007. I was a purple belt.
Right.
I got my brown belt a week later, and everyone was like, "Wow, you get graded really quickly in BJJ." So you don't. So 2007 we opened, and then I think promoted my first black belts. long ago was that? 9 years. Ooh, I don't know, probably 8 years ago, 7, 8 years ago.
Okay, and now you've got 3 stripes.
Yeah, I'm old.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've been a black belt since March 2011.
Okay. So how many BJJ black belts with 3 stripes are there in the UK?
Quite a few.
Yeah?
Yeah, so I think when I got my black belt, I was probably number mid-50s, I think.
Okay.
But it's like like I had students who I taught who got their black belts before me, who I started teaching in Sheffield,
Okay.
and then moved down just because of how moving around clubs and doing stuff.
Yeah.
It obviously, and then teaching my own and not going up to Rogers as often as I could, delayed that a little bit. But I reckon there's probably 50 to 60 black belts when I got mine. So
Okay.
all those guys will be pushing 3rd and 4th degrees now. But there's countless black belts altogether now as well.
Obviously that was, quite a long time
Yeah.
ago. But now you've got a thriving academy in Farnborough, but you've got another couple of things that you do as well. You're involved with the UFC, is that right?
So I judged. So I went and saw and watched the first ever UFC, 2002, Albert Hall.
Yeah.
Went and watched that as a fan, and that was the last event they did for I think till about 2007.
Okay.
I got a phone call. Ever judged any MMA? It's from a friend. It was like, well, I'd done a couple of local shows. Okay.
Yeah.
Then I get a call from UFC. Do you want to come and judge at our event in Manchester?
Okay.
So went up, had like tryout judging, and then became judge for them. Did all their sort of UK and international shows for a bit. Obviously, it's difficult for me to travel with the business and family and stuff. So I started just doing like the UK and local events. But
Yeah.
since COVID, they did Fight Iron and stuff. I kind of haven't done any judging since then, which is I did a good 10, 11 years of judging, and now I'm sort of the head coach, BJJ coach for UFC Gym UK. So they're setting up their gym franchise. So I'm like heading up their BJJ program for that as well. We're just waiting for them to build. They've got a couple of gyms, one in Nottingham, one in Woking, and then they've got some big ones being built as well. So then we'll be sort of training up their instructors.
Just in case you're not busy enough at this point.
Yeah, and then we have other stuff as well.
Okay, so other stuff as well. For those of you that aren't local, this part of the country is kind of historically the home of the British Army. We're Farnborough, so this is where the Royal Air Force started as well. So there's a huge military presence, and you do some work with the military as well.
Yeah, so it started off with their sports team. So I think that was 2014, maybe a year or so before that. We started pushing BJJ as a sport within the army.
Yeah.
With work from individuals who are serving and outside forces, and basically managed to establish BJJ as a recognised army sport. So guys can get funding if they go and compete as part of the army team. They'll still get on-duty status and stuff. So it's a fully recognised, fully fledged, probably the fastest growing sport in the army at the moment. Definitely the biggest martial art within the army. But yeah, that's going great guns. So I've been head coach of that since the inception. And then from that led into what we've developed is more of a combatives program. So less sporting, using principles of jiu-jitsu, but also striking, wrestling, judo, all the arts, weapon stuff. Because the British Army currently doesn't have a fully fledged official combative system. So it's just something we're working towards.
Okay, so you're kind of following in the footsteps of people like George Durrell Moscoff and Uyin Ishii, and the people that kind of created unarmed combat within the army. How does that feel? And obviously you're walking in the footsteps of some pretty big names in jiu-jitsu, but also from military terms as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of quite humbling and privileged. So I think I showed you the copy of the book I found, which is by Uyin Ishii from the PT school just up the road. Obviously then it was known as the gymnasium and the gymnastic staff, but it's quite sort of fitting that we're both like civilian jiu-jitsu instructors who are helping out the army. So that was quite nice, and then you obviously look through the books and you can recognise the techniques, and it's kind of humbling, but it's a nice path to follow, because I see jiu-jitsu still as a fully a combat art, and I think it's something that is very relevant for military and police. So it's kind of a passion and a side project for me that I want to do.
So that leads on to what is probably the biggest argument that I see on YouTube, normally in the comments section, about whether pure grappling arts are effective for self-defense. And what's your take on that?
Yes.
Okay, fine. Well, let's move on.
Okay, so let's put it into...
You'll get some response to that, I'm sure.
Right. So you can punch someone in the head if all you want, but what if they don't go down? Okay, let's put this into... There's a couple of perspectives. One, what we do for the military isn't self-defense. Okay, it can be used as self-defense, but it's a combative system. Like, at the end of the day, the army have guns. That's what their primary weapon is, and the system is just designed to get people back to weapons range. Okay. So that, like, the primary goal of that combative system is to maintain weapons range and get back to weapons range. There are certain times where they have to go hands-on to detain people, so it may go wrong there, so we can then teach them to control more and take them down if necessary, but the primary objective is not to interfere with their job role. It's an add-on, like a stoppage drill. Okay, so weapon stops firing, okay, they have a stoppage drill. Same when this person gets in too close, where they're inside the arc of the rifle, it becomes an ineffective weapon. If they don't have a sidearm, which most British don't carry sidearms as well, they need something else. So we're bridging the gap between shouting and shooting. At the moment, the only capability the army has is to shout at people, get them to comply, or to shoot them. So we're filling that gap. So it's slightly different to a self-defense context. Yeah. But if we put it into, so we'll go to a detaining point of view. If I want to detain someone, I have to go hands-on. When I'm in that close to detain someone and go hands-on, my strikes are going to be ineffective. Strikes need range to be effective. Yep. So we're going from weapons range, striking range. What's the point? Because I have weapons range. If I can punch you, I can shoot you. Okay. If you know what I mean. So we're going closer than that, so we have to grapple, and that's it. And the worst case scenario, I get bundled to the floor. I have to know how to grapple to get back to my feet, back to weapons range. Yeah. Then if we go to a self-defense, inverted commas, self-defense scenario, my take on self-defense is that if it goes physical, it's a fight. Self-defense is situational awareness, avoiding trouble, de-escalation, all that sort of thing. Well, way outside. If it goes physical, it's a fight. If we're in striking range, it hasn't gone physical yet. Okay, I can maintain that distance, go away, run off if I could. If I'm running away again, that's another rabbit hole. You need to have the correct footwear on. You need to know you're faster than the other guy. You need to know where you're going. Runner than you. And being able to turn around takes a lot of time. So that's a different option. But if we both stand and trade, punches and strikes, then attributes play a massive part. Like, you don't get a lot of heavyweight boxers fighting lightweight boxers for the reason that it's an unfair contest. Yeah, but there's plenty of absolute divisions in grappling. Because
apart from in Pride. But
Pride had the element of being able to grapple.
And that's why they did it, because it looks ridiculous.
Exactly.
And it's always the underdog.
Exactly. But what happens in every boxing match?
Yeah, the clinch.
The clinch happens in every boxing match. Boxing had takedowns before Queensberry rules. So
I didn't tell him that.
The clinch always happens. Yeah. So why risk, like, punching and striking, unless you know you're better, unless you're really well versed in it, or do we have time to train that, then the odds of me winning are negligible. Okay, the damage I can do with a punch to both myself, is a problem, and I might hit you really hard, but you just take that punch. Yeah. So the grappling phase can put the odds more into your favour, and I'm not saying it's where you want to go. You want to go to the floor? Yeah, I'm going to pull guard. No, that's just ridiculous. But I can clinch with you, limit your strikes. I can take you down while still being on my feet. I don't have to go down with you when I take you down. Okay, that's just some strange notion. Okay, so the grappling gives me an advantage when physical attributes aren't in my favour.
Yeah.
Okay, if I'm much bigger than the guy, much taller, and know my striking's going to win, then I just put my hand on his forehead and stand on the ground and just laugh at him. So it's like, it's different. And then you go to, what you see as BJJ matches, guy pulling guard and sitting down, is just someone playing a strategy for a certain set of points. Yeah, if I'm ridiculous enough to pull guard on the street, I deserve what I get. It's like, people assume just because the competition strategy is one thing, that person is going to use the same strategy in a street fight or the same strategy in the military. It's like, techniques are very similar, but the strategy behind the techniques and the tactics is what differentiates it.
Yeah.
And why I like grappling and jiu-jitsu is you have a strategy. I can go from here to this point, to this point, to this point, to this point, and I can back off and do that. With striking, I have one option to knock you out or not.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the argument I've always had with people, because, I mean, I like to think I have a similar opinion, but when people say, oh, grappling doesn't work, so I'm like, if I want to take you down, how are you going to stop me? Unless you also know how to grapple.
It's a notion called anti-grappling.
Yeah.
I keep saying it's anti-grappling. It's commonly known as grappling.
Well, yeah, absolutely. So there's something that I kind of have to mention now, that we had a news story break. Was it yesterday it came out? That the UFC and the WWE are going to merge under one media company now.
Why not?
I know. What are your thoughts on that?
I've always said to everyone that the UFC is now, it's the entertainment industry. It's not the fight industry. It's not who's the best fighter around. It is the entertainment industry. You'll get good fighters who get cut when they have one loss because they're boring. And then you'll get not so technical good fighters who have massive fan bases who are still fighting. And it's a business at the end of the day. If you, let's put it just into grappling context, jiu-jitsu is horrible to watch. Like, I love jiu-jitsu, I hate watching jiu-jitsu. Yeah, UFC, massive bonus. Yeah, you get bonus for submissions, you get bonus for knockouts, because humans understand high impact, high velocity. Same with judo, like, they change the rules to try and push big, high amplitude throws, because then the average layman understands what's going on, and they limit the groundwork 5 seconds. Okay? UFC is not the same. It's like time limits of the rounds. If you're on the ground too long, they'll stand you up. Okay, they're trying to push big knockouts, big takedowns and submissions, because humans understand high amplitude explosive movements. If you watch it and you see a guy breaking off a guy's arm, or get a massive hip throw, or get a massive takedown, or a knockout, you understand it. You don't need to be trained to understand that. So it is just entertainment. And like the money behind WWE, the money behind UFC, I think it's going to be great for the sport and their company, whether it's good for the self-defense and combatives aspect, not necessarily, but it's changed from its inception. Its inception was to prove in a one-on-one situation that jiu-jitsu was dominant, which they achieved. Then everyone started training jiu-jitsu and grappling and all that, and then it's now athlete versus athlete, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's a sport within itself. But yeah, the issue everyone's always going to have now is it rigged? And as a former judge for UFC, I can 100% guarantee none of the fights have been rigged.
So far. So what's the future look like for BJJ? I mean, it's gone from being this kind of underground. I mean, I remember I was doing karate. I'm a few years older than you. I was doing Shotokan, and I overheard a couple of guys talking about this Gracie Jiu-Jitsu thing, and I couldn't find anywhere to do it. And I was in West Yorkshire at the time, and there was nothing that the internet wasn't around. I had Combat Magazine and Terry O'Neill's Fighting Arts International, and that, you know, you'd occasionally get somebody talking a little bit about ground fighting. So, and it's gone from that to effectively an art you can train wherever you are. Every town has a BJJ school now. What's the future?
I think we're riding the crest of a bit of a wave in jiu-jitsu. We're coming into, I think it's peak era. I think it's going to grow Probably exponentially for a bit, 'cause, like, I do think it is an art that everyone can practice. You don't have to, like, striking is difficult to practice all the time unless you know, like, bag work and stuff. Like, you get a lot of injuries. If you train jiu-jitsu properly, you're going to cover all the self-defense stuff. It's got a great sporting aspect. So I don't see it going anywhere. I think there's a slight risk of it going a bit McDojo and karate, 1970s karate-esque, where it appears on every street corner but gets watered down. I think the strong competition element and still the strong link to MMA will make it harder for that to happen for jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
And the fact, like, especially in this country, like, the community is so small and everyone knows everyone, and we've got the best guys in the world teaching here. So to be a bit of a charlatan in this country is going to be very, very difficult. In the States, I think it's a bit harder because everyone's a bit more spread out, and there has been, like, UFC Gym had an incident of a guy being a fake black belt and stuff. But I think that everyone loves the art that much, they're going to try and preserve it. There's already splits happening, like the self-defense guys and the sports guys. I'm trying my best to not differentiate it.
Yeah.
What I see, though, most of the actual academy classes are the same. It's just the marketing that is pushed to a sports side or a self-defense side. But actually, if you look at the classes, they're pretty much all the same.
Do you see any difference between gi and no gi? Is that because coming from a background of catch, I see an awful lot of what I was taught 10 years ago as this is catch is now just generic no gi.
Yeah, I think, I thought, as we discussed before, grappling is grappling in my eyes. I mean, it just changes the rule set you're playing and the philosophy and tactics you're playing. I think, like, no gi is more entertaining to watch and more understandable than gi work. It's a bit faster paced. So I think for entertainment, there's, like, a lot of no gi shows. They will always be bigger, like, audience than gi jiu-jitsu. But it's the same. MMA, like, UFC has a far bigger audience rating than it does participation numbers. But as you drop down, the participation numbers go up and the audience numbers go down. So you go to, like, gi jiu-jitsu, the participation numbers will be way bigger than no gi.
Yeah.
You can see that when I put on a tournament. Or it's got IBJJF. No gi Euros was run over a weekend.
Yeah.
Gi Euros was a whole week.
Okay.
Yeah, 5,000 competitors. It's like, the participation numbers in gi will always be bigger, but the spectator numbers are going to be low. And I think it's kind of, they're connected.
Is that because gi is inherently more technical and people that get into it are, or is it that a lot of instructors won't grade you unless you also do gi?
I think it's outside of that. I think what it is the general population don't want to have a fight. Yeah. No, humans avoid conflict. They don't want to have a fight. So when I turn up to a class and I see guys rolling around in shorts and t-shirts, it's like, oh, it's more like MMA. It's more like a scrap.
Right.
And it is more athletic. Like, speed, size and strength plays more of a part in that no gi. In a gi you can negate that, but me turning up as an average person, have my daily life, put my gi on, have my class, take my gi off and go, it's more like you're training a martial arts still.
Yeah, absolutely. It ticks all the boxes of Aikido, karate, jiu-jitsu, whatever it was people were doing 20 years ago.
Exactly.
It fits that.
People want to train martial art. If you look at the Valente brothers, I mean, none of their guys compete, but they've probably got one of the biggest academies in the States.
Yeah.
And self-defense and fitness is probably always going to be a bigger selling point than competition.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so I don't think they're mutually exclusive. And that's what I try and do. We've got guys who compete here and guys who just train for self-defense and fitness. They're definitely not mutually exclusive. But if you push, I could have a competition academy, have 20 guys who are absolute killers.
Yeah.
But you won't be running a business.
Sure. There's just a couple more things I want to cover quickly before we finish. So, and what's jiu-jitsu done for you? You know, it must have been pretty beneficial because you're still doing it all these years later.
Stop me having to work a normal job. I think it just, I think it's filled a hole, not a hole, it's filled something in my life where, so I think it's given me confidence is the main thing. I think as a kid I was a lot shyer than I am now. Like, I'm naturally an introvert, and I've picked a job where I have to kind of stand up in front of people and teach, so it's taken me out of my comfort zone massively. It's, for want of a better term, empowered me. It's given me, given me that confidence that I know I can handle myself. Yeah. It's given me access to whole new worlds that most people wouldn't have, in terms of, one, behind scenes MMA stuff, all that, but also behind scenes military stuff that happens, you know. So it's given me access to a lot of things. But as I say, the main thing is, like, probably couldn't hold down a normal job.
Yeah.
It's allowed me to be my own boss, to run an academy, and it's allowed me to help a lot of people, which I've had the success stories we've had from the academy are actually really what it means. Like, I'd rather jiu-jitsu help someone lose 20 kilos, or we've had numerous people using it, one work-related, military and police, it's used and been useful, and also normal guys defending themselves who train at the academy, and that's the biggest thing for me, the biggest benefits. But yeah, it allows me to live a life I want to live.
Awesome. So if somebody wants to get into jiu-jitsu, how do they do it? And obviously locally.
Yeah, locally.
Don't come here.
But yeah, Google it. Try a few schools. Yeah, because not every school will fit you. Yeah, there's what we're in. Within a couple of miles of here, there's 3 or 4 schools. Yeah, people train at a school where they're going to find the coach and the coaching style and teaching style that best suits their personality. So that's what I recommend you do. Don't just turn up, start training at one school. Try 2 or 3 different ones, find which suits you, and then be comfortable, make sure you're happy with the environment, and go from there, and just enjoy it. It's a slog, it's frustrating, it's a cruel mistress, but keep going and you'll enjoy it.
Brilliant. Thank you.
No,
really
pleasure.
appreciate your time.
No, pleasure.